Hello, friends and readers of Amy Jo Levine's book on the Gospel according to John. Hello. Thanks for letting me have a couple of weeks to myself. Thanks for just letting me have the time to kind of process through some challenges that I've been facing. And I think it's okay to be honest with you about those challenges. Some of them are driven by events in the world. And then also just personally, I am living with cancer, and this was a chemotherapy week. And it can be distressing just to kind of have cancer on your mind quite a lot of the time. I've been living with cancer for 8.5 years. And the most ever that we've been able to go between MRI scans was one time we went 5 months, but that 5-month period then showed recurrence after that 5 months. So really for 8.5 years, between once a month, every 2 months, every 3 months, I've just been getting MRI scans for 8.5 years. I've now been on chemotherapy for 8 months after being on chemotherapy for a year, several years ago. So anyway, I don't want to take too much time on this, but I do just want to say that, you know, I've not been without some distress of late. And that is related to some national political events, as it would have a bearing in my life. We are a family. Both my parents and my sister is disabled, and so she does receive social services benefits that help them provide care for my sister. Certainly, I'm the beneficiary of some social services benefits as a result of living with a disability and a terminal illness, and in fact, even more so, the company where I work, a large chunk of our annual revenue comes through state government agencies, including Medicaid and several social services programs. So my life, personally and professionally, really revolves around state government agencies, social services work, health information exchange, etc. So I think it's both living with cancer, also working in the space of healthcare. And then, you know, I didn't think that the results of this general election turned out in the way that I thought was the best direction for the country. So I want to own that with you. Now, just like I said the last time, we are still in community. So don't go anywhere if what I just said is not compatible with your view. That is the beautiful thing about democracy, is that we have protected rights to speech, to disagree with the government when we think it's not going in the right direction, but we also celebrate diversity and pluralism of thought. I know I said that before. So, okay. Well, that's enough about where I've been. That's 2.5 minutes. I might as well get into chapter 4. We are indeed going to read chapter 4 this week. Maybe you've already read it weeks ago, but we will read it together as a group this week. Amy Jo Levine, remember, is taking us through the gospel according to John. We are looking at themes of lightness and darkness. We're looking at themes of spiritual awakening. These healing stories seem to have something about light and dark, something about being born anew or born from above or born again. These stories do have things about an evolution, about growing awareness, growing a spiritual awakening. These seem to be themes that will continue. We read a story about a person receiving sight previously. We read a story about a person who was instructed rather to take up their mat and go. And we talked about how that healing story then turned into really a Sabbath controversy. Now here yet again, we see someone who is given sight, and yet there's another Sabbath controversy that emerges. Now, there are some distinctions here. You know, the Pharisees are on the scene again, but unlike previously when the Pharisees kind of show up and question what's going on, in this case, it seems like the people present the man who is healed to the Pharisees. Now, what we need to understand is that what's happening in the gospel according to John here is rhetorical, not historical. Amy Jo Levine says that in particular. This is rhetorical, not historical. Now, we can ask some questions. Indeed, I think we should ask questions about why does the Johannine community, the community for whom this gospel was maybe created for, maybe those go together in a way. On my blog, some of you come through here through the blog, you know that I've been dealing with some of this over time about the Johannine community, about the beloved disciple, about was this a corpus, a group of writings that came together through multiple folk, or was there one predominant author who's responsible for the construction of this gospel? But it does seem like at some point this Johannine community felt themselves to be at odds with other Jewish sectarian groups. And the way that the Johannine author has chosen to talk about that is by connecting a story about expulsion from synagogues. Now, this is highly unlikely. We just do not have records outside of the New Testament text about expulsion from synagogues. There is later, in a corpus of Jewish writings known as the Talmud. This is not biblical writings, but rather it's rabbinic commentary and interpretation about the biblical writings. In the Talmud, late in Talmud, we do start to see a little bit of information about adversarial relationships between this emerging group of Christians and the existing group of Jewish folk as they existed then. That was composed beginning around the 200s of the Common Era. And then the Talmud is finally kind of wrapped up around 500 of the Common Era. There are two Talmuds. One was based in Babylonia. The Babylonian Talmud tends to be the more authoritative Talmud, but there's also a Jerusalem, Yerushalmi. The Jerusalem Talmud is also an authoritative document. It just tends to be the case that people in Jewish communities tend to treat the Babylonian Talmud a bit more authoritatively than the Jerusalem Talmud. But at any rate, we do see that there is a growing adversarial nature against some of these emerging Christians, but this would come long after the time that the Gospel according to John would have been composed. So we don't really have historical data to suggest that there was any sort of expulsion from the synagogue. So that's something to keep in mind as we read chapter 4. There's another trial here, or something like that. There's a court. There seems to be some informal convening of, indeed, the Pharisees to talk about this Sabbath controversy. But it is the Sabbath itself. So it seems very unlikely that a formal body would convene on the Sabbath. That seems to go against the rules of whether it's the Sanhedrin or just a group of informal Pharisees getting together. It seems highly unlikely that something like that would happen on the Sabbath. So it seems like we've got some rhetorical moves that are being made by the Gospel's author here. That's something I want us to think some about this week as we are reading. So healing, once again, healing that turns into controversy, some rhetorical moves that may not be historical moves. These are the things that we'll be talking about, moving from darkness to lightness. There are some reversals that happen throughout the text here. So pay attention to those reversals, pay attention to those themes of lightness and darkness. Thank you for your patience with me. That's your intro video to chapter 4 on this Monday. It is Monday, November 18th, 12:53 p.m. Eastern Time. So here's your intro video. If you haven't read chapter 4, start reading chapter 4 now. I will really be back with you Wednesday with the discussion prompt. And then we'll have the wrap up at the end of the week on Friday. Get into the Discord if you're not there already. Make sure that you're connecting with each other. You can talk about anything in there. There's a general channel. There's an off-topic channel. So anything that you want to be talking about in the Discord, feel free to be talking about it. That's totally cool to do that, or just hang out with the chapter summaries. That is the air fryer beeping because my veggie burger is ready for my lunch. So I better run. Happy reading, friends. Thanks for your patience with me over the past few weeks. And I can't wait to be in discussion with you on Wednesday.